Hi, I'm Brady Sistrunk with the MSU Alumni Association, and welcome to Ask the Experts, our new Young Alumni series, where we'll be talking about various subjects from, how to network, how to build your resume, how to build your LinkedIn profile. But tonight we'll be discussing meal prep and healthy meal options with Registered Dietitian Taylor VanDyk. And Taylor is a member of our MSU community here, and she is a registered dietitian and health and wellness educator. She completed her master's degree at MSU State University in 2019, and she works for the Department of Health Promotion and Wellness here. She also teaches a flexible approach to nutrition and believes that all foods have a place in our diet, even ice cream, which is great news to all of us out there trying to eat better in the new year. But tonight, Taylor is going to discuss how to make and show us how to make an Italian sausage zucchini skillet with tortellini. It's a mouthful. That takes less than 30 minutes to make, and it's great for meal prep and great for young professionals. So right now, we'll get cooking, and Taylor, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Brady. I got to do one of these videos for the Bulldog Bites program probably less than a month ago now. And yeah, it was a really good time and got to talk about all things nutrition. Nutrition is really one of those topics where there's just a lot of information out there, right? Like you can look on any different website and you'll find conflicting information about the same topic. So that's why when I get an opportunity to do talks like this, I really enjoy it because it's kind of my opportunity to, set the arrow straight. So I always appreciate the opportunity to do things like this. But as Brady mentioned, today we are doing a meal prep recipe, and we specifically chose this topic because a lot of young professionals out there, I think this is a task that feels very daunting to a lot of people, right? When we think about meal prep, we think, oh, it has to be all those little containers on the counter. I have to have my meals prepped from sun up to sundown. It has to be rice and chicken and broccoli. And that really is not the case. Like I'm not spending 3-4 hours on my Sunday afternoon meal prepping. Meal prep is what I would consider to be a foundational habit. And what that means is it is something that if you can really build and work into your lifestyle and your routine, it's going to make your life so much easier, right? Like even if you could have breakfast prepared on the weekend for the week, that's going to make your mornings go so much smoother. If you could have your lunches, like you don't have to think about all those things. I specifically chose this recipe because like I said, it takes less than 20 to 30 minutes to make, depending on the type of meat that you use, which I'll talk about in a second. It's incredibly easy. You really don't need any cooking skills. We're boiling noodles and chopping vegetables. That's about the extent of the skills that you will need for this recipe. And like I said, I'm not spending 3 hours on my Sunday, and I don't want you to have to do that either. So if you can get a couple for your, which I'm sure is something that stresses a lot of people out. So okay, my screen switched for a second. So we're gonna get right into the recipe. If you'll excuse me just 1 second, I need to stir my turkey before it burns over here. So what we are making today, like Brady said, is a tortellini and sausage skillet. I'm gonna talk about my ingredients going. So I want my veggies first, just because I want to get those in the pan. But I'm using zucchinis, and as you can, so I just used one zucchini and I cut it into little moons. So hopefully you can see that there. I cut up one red pepper just into, whoops, making a mess here. I just cut them into strips and then into like smaller pieces like that. And then I used just about 1/4 of an onion. So I just kind of cut it into strips. You could cut it however you wanted, or if you don't like onion, you could leave that out. That is the other beauty about this recipe is really it can be customized. Like I've made it with mushrooms before. I've made it with summer squash. I've made it with asparagus, like whatever veggies you really like and enjoy, you could absolutely add those. If you didn't want to use fresh, you could even use frozen veggies. So if you wanted to grab a bag of like the stir fry vegetables that have the peppers and the onions in them, put them in the microwave, steam them until they're done and use them in the recipe, that eliminates the chopping. You don't even have to do that. So there really are ways to just with a little bit of olive oil and salt and pepper. You're welcome to use other seasonings if you would like to, but if you, we're gonna add some pesto at the end. So if you don't wanna add other seasonings now, that is okay. So we're just getting those veggies in the pan. And then the other thing that we're using is turkey sausage. So this one you could use several different options. So I use like this Jenny O, kind of comes in a tube like this. It's turkey sausage and it already has Italian flavor. I think my camera's frontwards facing, so it might be backwards for you. I apologize, but it's just Jenny O is the brand. It's a very popular turkey brand and it's a national. So you can find it at any type of restaurant, or not restaurant, any type of like grocery store. The other thing you could do, I've done it with just, what was that? Grocery store, thank you. I've also done it with just regular ground turkey before, and then added my own like Italian seasoning or something like that. And the other option, again, just to take one more step out of it, is you could use already cooked sausage. So I've also bought those like sausage links before and just cut them up and warm up my veggies and just take that step. Totally be an option. So I have that going over here on the stove. And then the only other thing, a couple of things that you're going to need, I'm using tortellini. So I'm just using like tri-colored tortellini. There's cheese in it. If you like one that has beef in it or meat, you could absolutely use that. Of course, you're just going to boil it in a regular pan with water, just like you would any pasta. This is from the frozen section, but you could buy, I know you can buy tortellini and stuff in the refrigerator section as well. And you could also swap that out for any type of pasta. Like I know some people are gluten-free, so you might have to switch that for a gluten-free option. Sorry, this is like sizzling, very loud behind me. I hope it's not interrupting the audio back there.
That's good.
Okay. So pasta, you could switch it out for any type of pasta. Another type of pasta that I really enjoy is the Banza pasta. So that is a pasta that's actually made with chickpeas. And so if you wanted to skip the meat, that Banza pasta would be a really good option because it has, or any sort of lentil pasta would work too, but it has a high amount of protein in it. Like I think one serving is 23-ish grams of protein and 7 or 8 grams of fiber. And so that would be a really good amount for a pasta that you don't even have to add meat to. So that would be an option too, is swapping out meat for a higher protein pasta option. You could use gnocchi, you could use ravioli, really whatever kind of pasta you want, you could absolutely sub that out for what we're doing here. So I'm going to add that to my water back here. And I would say this recipe probably is good in the fridge. I mean, I would say a full 5 days. Like if you made it on Sunday, you could definitely keep it in the fridge until Friday or so. And it makes a good amount, probably at least 4 to 5 servings, if not more. And then, so after all this is done, my veggies are cooking, my turkey is cooking. After all this is done, I'm just going to combine it in my one pan. And then all I'm going to do is, again, if you didn't have Italian flavored turkey, you could add your own seasoning, like a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. But what I'm going to do after is I combine it all. I'm just going to add a little bit of extra olive oil, probably about a tablespoon. And then I'm using basil pesto. So this is just in a jar. You can buy it in the pasta aisle where the other sauces are. I'm just going to add about 2 giant tablespoons of the pesto. I really love pesto. It's nice and fresh, especially as we're heading into these warmer months. You could also, if you wanted to use basil, or again, if you need with olive oil or salt, pepper, those types of things, then it would be just as good. So that really is it. I mean, I'm happy to keep cooking this as we kind of chat. We're going to do some other Q&A type things, but that really is as easy as it is for that recipe. So if you try it, you'll have to comment and let us know so we know how you liked it.
So Taylor, one thing is, what if somebody's not a big fan of veggies? Is there anything, or the certain type of veggies? Is there other types of veggies that would be nutritional that they could put in, or how can they make it their own, but still staying healthy?
Yeah, so that is difficult. People who don't like veggies, I run into them every day. I'm sure some of you out there are watching. I will say that in order for you to start liking things, it can take, upwards of 20 to 30 times of trying something in order to change the taste buds and, think about things a little bit differently. So I would encourage you to keep trying different things. The other thing is I run into a lot of people who think that they don't like vegetables, but in reality, they might not just have liked how their parents prepared them when they were younger, or maybe they never learned how to cook them. So I would encourage you to maybe do some experimenting and try some different things. I love roasting vegetables. Something like this is a good option because it's kind of mixed in with other things. So it's not necessarily like you're just sitting there eating broccoli. But I think a lot of times when we think of the vegetables we don't like, we think of like that, like the steamed mushy vegetables, things like that. But like you said, Brady, you totally could make this your own. If you didn't like these veggies, like I mentioned at the beginning, you could do tomatoes, you could do anything else. You could even add like a red sauce to this. I really like red sauce for hiding vegetables because I feel like it's very overpowering flavor. And so it kind of, you could have a lot of veggies in there, even if it was like a few handfuls of spinach, and you probably wouldn't, it would really mask the flavor as opposed to this where you're leaving it loose.
So also too, obviously meal prepping is really popular. How can you make your meal prepping healthier? And how can you kind of take out the guesswork? You're showing us a really easy recipe to do, but how can you make it a habit each week? As we get busier and busier with work, and each week it kind of gets away from us. How can you make it part of your week and make it even healthier?
Yes, that is a great question. So first and foremost, I usually tell people that, so a lot of times we think that you need motivation first and then the action will follow. And I would disagree. Typically you need to take action and then the motivation will follow. So sometimes you might just need to give yourself a little kick in the butt and do it one weekend, because then that following week, you'll probably realize how much better it made your week go. And that will kind of reinforce that habit, right? So it's kind of like positive reinforcement. So that is one thing. Like I said, making sure you're choosing easy recipes that aren't overwhelming. Because I think a lot of times, like I was mentioning at the beginning, when we think of meal prep, we often think of these, like elaborate plans to prep every single meal for the week. So if you're new to this, I would recommend just choosing one meal or even one item. So for instance, for dinner, instead of thinking like, oh, I have to plan my chicken, my rice, and my vegetable for dinner, just make the rice. Like that's just take that first step and don't necessarily take all the steps. Like let's maybe this first week we'll make the rice. Next week, if we're feeling good and we really enjoyed that, like let's add the chicken. And then also I think meal prep gets boring, like I said, when you think about those. So what I always encourage something to my clients is once you find recipes that you like, have a list somewhere, whether I know it's kind of like a Pinterest almost, I guess, but in your head or on a notebook on your refrigerator or on a whiteboard on your refrigerator and a note in your phone, and kind of start to keep track of those recipes that you like and enjoy. So if you like this one, like add it to your list. And so every week when you're going to make your grocery list, it's not spending an hour looking through cookbooks and Pinterest and things. It's like, oh, I have this list of 10 to 20 meals that I really like, I really enjoy. I know I usually have some of the ingredients on hand. And so you kind of always have something to refer back to. So it's not constantly looking for new things.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a lot of people that I talk to, young professionals, they think dieting, and that's such a cliche, term, but healthy eating, they think it's so expensive to do. But it's so much more expensive to eat out every day and live that lifestyle. So how can you eat healthy, but also on a budget? After you just graduate college, you may not have as much money as you like, but you still need to eat healthy. What are your tips for doing that?
That's a really great point. I would say that that kind of is a myth that eating healthier really is that much more expensive. Like if you're only buying organic and things like that, like of course that can add up a little bit. But if that's not something that's super important to you, sometimes like fresh fruits and veggies, like the veggies that I use for this, probably altogether less than $2. Like I used a quarter of an onion. A zucchini is usually less than $1. A pepper is usually $1, maybe $1.50. And all those together, I'm going to have veggies for 4 or 5 meals. So I guess that would, and then also budget. A lot of times when we think of veggies, we think of we have to have fresh. I would encourage you, like it's totally fine to have canned and frozen vegetables in your diet. A lot of times those kind of get a bad reputation, like those aren't necessarily healthy. And that really is just not the truth. Actually, frozen vegetables, they're frozen at the peak of their ripeness. So frozen vegetables are usually actually just as healthy as if you were to buy them fresh. The only difference is in the frozen food section, of course, you can find a lot of vegetables that have things like seasonings or sauces or cheeses or things on like those types of things, which again are fine, especially if you're just getting into vegetables. That would be a good way to maybe introduce them and like have them taste a little bit better. And then same thing with canned vegetables. They generally do have a little bit more sodium, but you can just rinse them off in a colander and they're perfectly fine.
And I know, Taylor, we're talking about dinner recipes, but me personally, I'm not a huge breakfast fan during the work week. And that can be such an unhealthy meal if you grab a quick like muffin from a coffee shop or something. How can you make meal prepping? I think a lot of people think of it as a dinner time thing, but how can you make it more of a breakfast? Things for people like me who, maybe running late to work sometimes, or maybe just get busy every morning.
Yes, I honestly, breakfast is one of my favorites to prep because I would say that that is one of something that I struggle with is running late or like not waking up on time, so for me, that is crucial to my day is not having to think about that step. So I would recommend things like overnight oats is a big one right now. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but you put like oatmeal and milk and yogurt or protein powder or something in just a container and let it set overnight. And then the oats kind of absorb the liquid. And so that's a really good option. Quick things that really don't require a lot of prep. So I really love things like yogurt parfaits. So you could do a cup of yogurt, take the lid off, add some strawberries and dry cereal. And it's like, there you go. You already have a breakfast on the go. I really like baked oatmeal cups. So I take like oats and bananas and things like that. We actually did something back in,
right.
Yes, for the 5K. Yeah. So that is probably available for you to find. I made apple baked oatmeal cups. You can make them with banana or applesauce, but baking them on the go in the morning. So those are ready to go. Same thing you could do with egg cups. Like I know I talk to a lot of people that make little mini quiche type things where they mix eggs and veggies, maybe a little bit of cheese, and you can bake them in a muffin tin and then have those. You can either keep them in the freezer or the fridge and just heat them up before you go. Hard-boiled eggs are a really good one. Those are, I guess, kind of my main go-tos. I do know a few people that make breakfast sandwiches ahead of time and put them in the freezer. So you could actually put like, you could do like a sausage, like a pre-cooked sausage. You can buy those just eggs in the freezer section at the grocery store. It's called Just Egg, literally. And they're just like egg patties, and you could put that on a sandwich and then they wrap them up and put them in the freezer and then take them out. Or if you wanted to, like Jimmy Dean and like those types of things, you can buy breakfast sandwiches that are pre-made too.
What are some tips that you have for recent grads? Not just meal prepping, but just how to, if they want to eat healthier, how can they do that? How can they make it more of a habit?
Good question. So a couple different things, I guess I'll go. One is I talked about this in that Bulldog Bites, if you want to head back and watch that, but this is critical to having an overall healthy and balanced lifestyle is getting rid of the all or nothing mindset. I talk to so many people and it's like, I'm all in on the diet. I'm eating healthy. I'm eating clean every single day. But then the weekend comes, I fall off the wagon. I feel bad about it. That spiral all of a sudden turns into a 2-week off the wagon time. Yeah. Whereas if you can get rid of that all or nothing and like it has to be good or it has to be bad and be okay with balance, that is what's going to be able to sustain you long term. So like, sure, we're good, 60 or 70 to 80% of the time we're eating good balanced meals and including vegetables, but then that still leaves 20 to 30% of the time for what I would consider to be more fun foods. And so what I would encourage you to do is instead of thinking about it in terms of a meal, this is good versus bad, take almost like a bird's eye view of your diet. Like if I'm taking inventory of my entire week's worth of meals, is this, is that 70 to 80% good, healthy, balanced meals, or do I need to do some reevaluation there? And then going off of that, I'm talking about balanced meals a lot. I just want to elaborate on that. When I'm talking about a balanced meal, I'm always talking about you want to include 3 components at a meal. So I usually say include a carbohydrate or a starch source. So that would be any sort of grain, cereal, pasta, rice, quinoa. Starchy vegetables would fall into this as well. So things like corn and potatoes and peas and those types of things, butternut squash. And then pair that with a protein source. So a protein source is of course going to be any sort of meat source. It could be a dairy source like yogurt. It could be a plant-based source like soy or nuts or seeds or those types of things. Eggs, of course, like those types of things would be all good protein sources. So pairing those together and adding a color source. So color is going to be a fruit or a vegetable. And I always say or because, for instance, maybe at breakfast you'll have a banana, but then at lunch you might have a salad with your sandwich or something like that. So you might get a little bit of different colors. And so always just working in some color somewhere in your diet.
And you mentioned something about carbs. Are carbs always bad? Like, some people think they are, because some people say never eat carbs. Like I'm gonna cut out every carb in my diet. Is that a good idea?
That is another great question. No, carbs are not the enemy. And on my social media, I literally have my bio that says,
yeah,
or I want you to eat carbs. That's what it says. So a lot of times they do get a bad rep. And honestly, carbs cannot make you fat. The only thing that can cause someone to gain weight is an excess calorie or like having extra calories in your diet over a long period of time, not overnight. It doesn't work like that. But carbs kind of get that bad reputation, and that's just not the truth. And your carbs actually provide a lot of energy for you. There's a lot of, I guess, other benefits like fiber, for instance, like your cereals and your breads and things like that. That's where you get a lot of your fiber. And a lot of Americans are lacking in fiber. And we got a lot of like our B vitamins and iron and things like that through our grain sources specifically. So yeah, carbs are definitely not bad, and they provide you a lot of energy. And then I'll also say a lot of times when we talk to those people that are going all out on the carbs and they're saying, I'm not going to have any carbs, that tends to be one of those cycles, right? Like we can do it for a week, we can do it for 2 weeks, but then all of a sudden we're in front of a pizza and we haven't had carbs in 2 weeks. And so I'm just going to eat all the pizza because I finally have access, and my body kind of takes over and decides to eat all that pizza. So I guess that would it's just not super sustainable for most people.
Yeah. What about pasta? I mean, that's obviously a carb, and we're cooking it tonight. Mm-hmm. You mentioned some healthier options. How can you incorporate that for pasta lovers out there?
Yes, good question. So pasta, again, it was one of those ones that I feel like just gets this bad reputation, but pasta is actually a very slow digesting carb. So it's not, a lot of times when we're talking about carbs, we talk about sugary carbs. And I guess the only negative thing about the sugary carbs would be that they cause your blood sugar to go up really quickly and then down really quickly. So think about eating a donut, right? Like you have an energy spike, you feel great for an hour, but then you might have that crash. Pasta is a very complex carbohydrate, so it doesn't have that effect. It's very like goes very up really slow and then it goes down really slow, so you won't ever feel that crash. But with that being said, I would encourage you still to have that balance and pair it with a protein source. So a lot of times when we have pasta, for instance, think about a meal of spaghetti that you've had recently, your entire plate is filled with spaghetti, right? So instead of doing that, could we have half the plate of spaghetti and then fill the other half of the plate with a Caesar salad or some green beans or something like that? So you're still getting the pasta, you're not depriving yourself of that, but it's not necessarily as much as you typically would have.
So basically everything in moderation, right?
And yeah, that's the short answer.
That's good news. Do you want to give us an update on how the pasta and the veggies are going? I think
we're looking good over here. Actually,
this is time where I wish we had smell of it.
I know. I'm like,
you scratch the screen and smell it.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll show you my veggies are.
Yeah.
Down here.
That's good.
And we're just going to take the sausage and add it to my pan here. Probably should have drained that a little bit, but I didn't, so oh well. And then I just drained my pasta, so I'm just gonna add that in here too. And like I said, I'm gonna add a couple big heaping. When I say heaping, I'm gonna say heaping. Like I'm gonna do a lot of pesto, so we're gonna do that. I like pesto. If you don't like basil, that's not gonna be good, but yeah, but you, like I said, you could use a red sauce or something if you wanted to too. And then just add a little bit of more olive oil to help spread that out. And we'll see if I can get you a good.
And it took you less than 30 minutes to make all of it. So it's totally doable when you come home from work to cook healthy.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll show you what I got. I hope it doesn't steam my camera up, but
No, it looks good.
that's what we got going on here.
Yeah. Well, that was great, Taylor. Any other final, I think that's all the questions we have right now, but any other final tips or tricks even for healthy eating?
Ooh.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where do I start?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think honestly, where I start with most people is just really getting in that balance and trying to do that throughout your day, because it's, anybody can do it for a week, anybody can do it for one meal. How can we take that one good thing that's happening and, spread it out throughout your week? And again, like I was talking about the meal prep, if you want to start and you're overwhelmed, start with one thing. Start with just the muffin cups in the morning, or just the egg cups in the morning, or just the hard-boiled eggs, and see how that goes. And if it was helpful for you, then maybe the next Sunday you spend an extra 20 minutes and make one more thing. And so don't go into a Sunday like, I have to make every single meal for the entire week. Like, no, that's not how it works. And the other thing, I guess, too, instead of meal prepping, something I sometimes recommend is batch cooking. So instead of making like actual meals, just making components of meals. So that's what I was talking about when I talked about the rice. Like, could you just make rice, or could you just make pasta, or making your protein for the week? For instance, a lot of times I'll buy a rotisserie chicken and like use the rotisserie chicken in 2 or 3 different recipes. Or if you have an Instant Pot or you wanted to bake chicken, you could bake 4 or 5 chicken breasts and use that in chicken spaghetti. And then you could use it in chicken tacos, and you could have it just as a chicken breast on a plate. So finding ingredients that are a little bit versatile can be really helpful for meal prep too.
Well, you definitely got me hungry. I think it's dinner time for both of us. But thank you.
Yeah,
again.
I'm excited to go eat this now.
Yeah, so you have dinner now. But thank you again, Taylor, for joining us, and thank all of our viewers for joining. I think we really got some good tips on how to meal prep, but also how to eat healthier in 2021, which I know everybody's trying to do after the new year and heading up to summer. So thank you again, Taylor, and thank you to all of our viewing audience, and make sure to join us next time for Ask the Experts. Thank you again, and Health State.